Hello students, this is the third video on chapter number 2 Python fundamentals, and before I proceed I just want to recall the topics that we have covered and I hope you've learned these topics. So we have covered character sets, tokens, and under tokens there were many subtopics, keywords, identifiers, literals, operators, punctuator, and then we come to know about the bare bone of Python program, and then expressions, statements, comments, functions under the bare bone, block and indentation. So these subtopics we have learned under bare bone of Python program. And then we have also learned variables and assignments. So till this topic we have covered in video number 2, and now in this video we are going to learn about simple input and output statements. So sometimes while writing program you want to prompt the user to input certain value, or you want to make your program more interactive, so you need to supply some messages. So for that we use input. So first of all we are going to learn about the input, simple input statement. So when you visit ATM machine, so you might have seen some messages appear there. So that type of message, suppose you want to display to your customer, so you can write enter your pin. Let's say enter your pin. Okay, so the same message you might have seen, and you want to store whatever value the user want to input. You just want to store it in some of the variables. So I have just written this message, enter your pin or anything, and enter your pin code or whatever you want to message. Okay, anything, and I want to store the value in x, variable x. This is variable x. Okay, and this is input statement, you can say. So this I have used. Okay, so when the user will operate or will run the program, this message will displays to the user. So this message will appear, and suppose the 2345, this is pin, user have entered this pin. Now you should understand this pin that has been input by the user has been stored here in x, because this was the variable that will store the value that was entered by the user, and this was the message that you have displayed using this input state. Okay, if you want to check that what value does this variable x store, you just write down here x and press. So you could see here 2345 is stored there. Okay, one more thing, you can see some quotes are also there. Okay, we will just see one more, y. Let's say y. One more example, input, write input, and bracket, parenthesis, and within the quotes the message. Okay, enter your amount. Let's say amount, whatever you want. Okay, and here the message display. Let's say I want to draw 3000 rupees. So that is stored in 3000 and y. Okay, so this we call input. Now we will just learn something more about it. Okay, now a is equal to input. Let's say you want to add two number. Okay, and you want the user to prompt the user by giving the message enter the first number. Okay, and here enter the first number, let's say it's a 10, and then you want to create another variable b, and the same message you want to give okay, to the user, enter the second number. Okay, this is done, and the message comes here, and the second number that the user has enter, let's say it's a 15. Okay, now you remember that in a the number that has been stored is 10, and in b the number that has been stored is 15. Okay, now I just want to show you. I just will press here a, and it's a 10 there, and I will press b and 15 is there, and again I just want to draw your attention to these codes. Okay, that's just I'm going to explain you. Now if I want to add these two numbers and store them in Z, so I will write Z is equal to A plus B, let's say. Okay, so this value, the value of A and B, as you expect that it has been stored in Z, then if I just want to check what is the value in Z, I will just press Z and you can see it's a 1015. We should expect that, okay, 10 and 15 would have been 25, but it's a 10 and 15. Why it's happening? And why did I ask you to mark this course? Because when you enter the value using input statement, what is happening? The number or anything that you enter, the data that you enter is stored in the form of strings, and that's why it appears here within the course, and that's why it is added here. In a string, you can add the string in Python. So that's why the value that you enter using input is stored as a string. So if you want to perform some mathematical operations on these type of values that you have taken using input statement, then how it is possible? So that is also possible. We will see. Before that I show you, I just want to now show you some more example. Let's say I have just written one variable age and I want here the user to input his or her age. Enter your age, okay, and let's say the user has entered 15. Now if I want to add age, I want to add something to age, let's say 12. So it's showing error. It is showing error. Okay, why? Because in the age it's a 15, but this is in the form of a string and this is integer number. So Python cannot add a integer and a string. It can add integer with the integer or a string with the a string. That can be done. I can show you. Okay, I just want to show you that we can add a string in Python. So in a variable x, I'm assigning the value, let's say class, and in y I'm assigning value, let's say 11, and I can add this x plus y, and you can see the both have been added here. Okay, so we can add a string in Python. There's no problem, and that's why when I try to add age to 1, so that was problem. Okay, let's say x is equal to, or let's say age equal to input, okay, age. So I have entered here, let's say 15. So now this 15 has become a string. I should have written it a, not is, because the variable is, so it has given 15. Okay, so this is a string. Next time if I say, okay, I write a is equal to 15. Okay, now I will press a again. Now this time it's a number. You can see, okay, when I use when I take this 15 number using input in the variable a, the result is shown is an string type. It's a 15. Okay, so here a, when 15 was pressed there, so it was a string. Now here when I take it simply and input, it says it's a number. Okay, so these are different. This 15 is a string, this 15 is input. Okay, so if we want to, the question is that if we want to enter the value using input function, this one, but still we want them to be, the data should be in an integer or float or whatever, so that can be done. I will just write down, okay, let's say a is equal to, I will write down this int function is there. So the first opening braces of this int is started here. I will write down input inside this int function. Here I will write down enter your age. Okay, and this closing one. So just remember, this first parenthesis, opening parenthesis, has this closing one here, and this opening has a closing here. So that's why there are two closing parentheses here. So now what I have done by writing this, I want to enter the user age, but that age should not be, I don't want that should be in a string type. I want that should be in a number, in integer type of number. I have written as enter. So I have used this int function. Within that int function, I have used input function, and here I have given the message to the user. Now we will just see enter your age, and I'm putting in 15 only. So enter. Now I will check what is in A. Is it string type data or in integer type data? So it's a 15. You can see here it's a 15 without quotes. That means it's now integer type of data. Okay. So here it was one I didn't use. Okay, you can see here the same thing I've used, but I didn't use int function. Okay, this int function was not used here. Okay, only input function was used. So that time the data was stored in the form of a string, but when I use that int function, so now the data is in a integer type. So the type of the data is integer. So I can, if I add now a plus 12, so I'm adding 15 and 12, and you can see the answer. There is no error now because now both a is the data in the a is integer and this 12 is also integer. So there is no problem. No error has been raised here. So this is how you can take. Similarly, you can take float types of data also. Let's say b is equal to here I'm going to use float. I hope you remember what is a float type of data. The decimal number. Okay, enter your percentage for two closing brackets. Okay, now it's a float, so I can write anything here. Let's say 75, because this is also considered as a float. This will be 75.5. Right now I'm just showing you, I'm just entering in the float number 75.8, and it has accepted it, and I write b, check, it's a 70.8. So this is how you can take okay, if you want the number, the input that has been entered by the user to be in a float type, so you can use this float function, and within the float function again you have to use this input function. One more thing, I just want to show you. Again, I'm just using, let's say x is equal to enter and input, enter your, let's say, age only. Okay. Now I want the data should be in integer type. But erroneously or by mistake, I have just used some float number 15.5. Let's say you want your age is 15 and I have to write 15.5. So you will see what is there. So it raises an error. Okay, this is not correct because you want the data to be stored as an integer, but here the data that was input was a float number. So it shouldn't be there, otherwise it will raise error. Okay, if you have done it's an integer type, it should be integer type only. If the data should be integer type. If we say okay, it should be float type, so it should be float type only. Be float. Enter yours. Okay, so this time you want the data should be entered in the float type. Let's have 70.50. You enter this. Again, it's really so because what you asked, the data should be float type. What did you enter? The data was a string type. So it's a wrong. Again, error is raised here. Now I want this time be float input, enter your marks, and I have entered, let's say, 75. So do you think, what do you think, will it raise error or not? Do you think this is a float or integer type of number? Question will be in your mind. We will just see. So no problem. It has accepted it. It didn't raise any error. Why? When we check what is in B, so what I have entered here 75. And I just want to check what is there in B. So it is given 75.0. So this 75 can be taken as an integer, can be taken as a float, whatever variable you have created for, it can be accepted. The 75 means the number without point can be considered or can be taken as an integer, can be taken as a float. Here I have entered is a as a only 75 without any point, so it has taken it's a 75.0 because I have just used float number. The next time, if the same thing I want here, this time I just want it as integer type. Okay, int, and I just want to enter the same number 75. Now again, I have entered 75 and I just want to check in B what is there in B. So it's at this time 75 only. Here it was 75.0, here it's 75, whereas the data was same when I input that 75. Why? Because this is integer. I want this data to be integer type. So the number without any point, any decimal point can be taken as an integer, as a float numbers, okay, according to the function that you have used. Now I hope you understand that you should be careful when you are using float or integer function to input the value and store in that type of data. So the data should be input in that form only. And I just want to show you one more thing. Okay, B is equal to float input into your marks. And if I only input a 75 and only point, so do you think will it raise any issue? No, it has taken. So this can also be considered as a float. If you want to check, you can check what kind of data it is there stored. Okay, it's a 75.0. So I have only put 75, only point is there. So it has automatically converted to 70.50. Again, once again, this time I'm just doing it point, let's say 67. So we'll see what is, so it's a automatically converted to 0.67. So this is also a valid float number, this is also a valid float number, this is also a valid float number, and of course 75.0 or whatever you write, that is also a valid float point, 75.5. So I have shown you valid float number, valid float number, valid float number, valid float number. These four can be taken as a float number. Okay. So this is all about your input statement. You have seen how you can input the value. Initially you have seen that the value that you use using input function, so that is taken as a string. Okay, so if you want in a particular value, so what you have to use, you have to use int function and float function, so that should be clear. Now we are going to learn about output, simple output, I would say simple output. Okay, here you have already seen the print statement. Okay, so print statement is one statement that can be used to, let's say I want print hello. Now I can print even number, print let's say 10.5, and it has printed here. I can even now do some calculation, let's say 5 into 6. Okay, so it has printed 30. Okay, I can even use variable a is equal to, let's say 10, and I will write print okay a plus, let's say 20. So what answer would be there? In a it's a 10, so 10 plus 20 is a 30. So these all you can do using print statement. Okay, now you can use multiple comma separated expressions also. So I have just used this input function here. Enter your age. Let's say the age is 20. Okay, and enter here. Okay, now I just want to what would be the age of a person. Okay, so your age after 5 years. So what I am going to use it is age age plus 5. Okay, so two expressions are there. You could see two expressions are there. One is this, your age after 5 years, comma, age plus 5, and see, your age after 5 years, 25. So this expression, this is one expression and this one is expression. Like this, you can use a number of expression, okay, that will get printed, okay. We can use here printer, let's say 2 plus 5, 2 plus 3, comma, 5 into 4, comma, 6 minus 2, like this, okay. And you will see the answer has been given here 524. So I have used three expression here, okay. This time only purely calculation. You can use string also and the calculation also. So this you can do using print function. Okay, now if I simply write print here and nothing is given within the brackets, so it will print a blank line. Now I will just again write the three objects that I have written here. Okay, I will just copy it from there. Okay, this time I'm not going to give any space here. Okay, so you can see there is no space, and when I print this, the space is already added there. So this is done by the Python by default. If you give any comma, so it takes them as separate objects. Okay, this, and separate object, and this sep is the separator, and this automatically inserted within the objects that you, this we call sep argument, and this is automatically inserted if we haven't given any space there. So this Python will automatically insert this and will gap here. Okay, now we will just want to see one more thing here. Okay, I will just print out the same thing here, paste the same thing here, and this time what I am going to do, I just want to show you that this separator is already there, though it is not visible, but it is there. Let's say if I write separator is equal to, let's say I want these three dots there in place of separator. So this, the separator, okay, now there is no gap again, but you already know the separator argument has given this gap, but this time I don't want gap, so I want these dot dot line. So I have given the argument sap is equal to within the course this dot dot dot. We will see, you can see, okay, this gap has been filled with this dot dot dot. So whenever there are different objects and you haven't given any space between them, so Python will automatically create the space between them. If you want to, if you want anything else to be filled in that gap, you can give you can assign that value, or you can assign that strings to that separator, and it will be printed there. One more thing, I just want to let you know that the print function convert numbers or anything to string. Okay, string. So if I write print, let's say within this 5, so this 5 is actually a string. Okay, this is not a number. So this is one thing. Second thing, you have already learned about the separators. Okay, the argument separator is already inserted by the Python. Next, Python add new line character at the end of the print statement. Okay, print function. Suppose I write print I am 20 years Okay, old. Now next printer. I study in RP school. Okay. So now these have been printed. These two lines have been printed in the new line. In some of the program, if you give the print statement function in the two line, so they will get printed in single line. So here in Python, automatically add the new line character. New line character you might have seen there. This we call new line character. The same thing I want to show you here in a script mode. I have written two statement here, two print statement in two lines, and I just want to run it, and you will see that both the statement using the print function have been printed here in two lines. Now you can see that I have written two statements using print functions, but I have introduced one end argument here, and this is a gap. So I have specified this gap to this end argument. That means I want to print these two statements in one single line. This end statement will join these two lines together, giving the space here. I then can just show you after running this module. You can see. Okay, here again. I am 20 years old. I study in RV. So this gap was maintained by. I can give anything else to that gap. I will just show you. Now this time I am writing something else. I can give some okay dollar sign. Let's say this dollar sign. I want this dollar sign to be printed there between these two lines. So I can just save it and I will just run it. Okay, here you see here. Okay, this dollar sign. So that also you can do if you want that the multiple print statement you want them to be print in a single line. So you can use this end argument to join two lines without anything or with some symbols or anything else. Okay, that can also be done. So with this, your chapter 2 is completed. Thank you very much.